Hello there and welcome to this video on a 3D printed servo tilt mount that I've made for the Detect+X380 Quadcopter. Before I show you the actual servo tilt platform in action, what I'd like to do is show you some of the things that I put into the design. This right here is the main support that comes off the bottom of the quadcopter, and again you'll be seeing this shortly here when I show you it running on the quadcopter, the finished product. But one of the challenges was to get the 4 holes here lined up with the 4 holes in the factory mount. These align perfectly, and it's hard to tell on this 3D design. Maybe you can see it when I tilt it, but see right there I've actually recessed those holes just like the factory had it. Note also how there's an opening right here. This opening, let me zoom in here, this opening aligns with the opening that goes up into the battery box of the Detect+X380 Quadcopter. Now what I've done to balance this as much as possible is I made this plane here. Notice how the hanger is sitting right in line with the front to back center of gravity. So I did that in that direction because the camera is going to hang off to this side over here. The camera with the servo and everything. I also centered it up in this direction from left to right basically on the quadcopter. And in order to do that and have that hole there, I had to do a little bit of a cutout here. Right in this area you can see how that's sloped above that opening. Now I don't use this opening myself, but while I was designing it I thought may as well go ahead and have an opening there in case somebody does want to pull power or something out of the battery compartment. Note also how I have reinforced this vertical support here. It's approximately about 2.5 millimeters thick up here, but as it goes down I've put a wedge support on the side of it to help strengthen it to keep it from being flimsy back and forth in this direction. This opening here perfectly fits the servo horn that's going to be mounted on the platform. These holes align properly on the belly of the X380 Detect Quadcopter. And so moving on, this is the actual camera mount that is there to hold the Mobius camera and its radio. This is for the Mobius cradle from Hobby King, which actually combines together the Mobius camera, cradles it up with a FPV radio so that you can actually film through your Mobius while you're using it for FPV. Some key points on here are this area here actually fits right over the heat escape vents on the quadcopter's Mobius camera. So that aligns not on the Mobius camera but on that Mobius cradle. There's quite a bit of heat comes out of here, so I left that open. This actually sits, let me tilt it and so it'll make more sense. This actually sits underneath the quadcopter like that. So the servo goes in there, the end of the servo will stick out of here. This piece will be hanging upside down under the belly of the quadcopter like that basically, and then this piece will connect to it. And I'm not going to line these perfect, I'm just trying to kind of show you this here, but anyway, this will end up being back under here sort of. It's kind of hard to show without having everything hooked up, but the bottom line is this comes down from the quadcopter, and this is the mount that actually holds your Mobius camera, and it ends up connecting on the servo shaft right through that hole there. And then this whole thing basically pivots up and down, and the way I made this way this is made, it can do a full 90-degree tilt downward. So if you want to look for something straight underneath the X380, you can. The drawback is that when this is setting on the ground, it's only about 3/4 of an inch off the ground, and you have to have your camera facing forward, sort of oriented like you can see this cradle right now. When you're sitting on the ground. But once you get up in the air, you can turn this a full 90 degrees straight downward. This cradle that I designed here, it is also pretty well balanced. If you notice the support area where it mounts to this up here, this is pretty well centered in the camera. When it's actually hooked up and the camera is in this mount, the antenna goes over this way, which helps to balance it even further. This little device here, I won't even begin to try to put it in there, but that device there is a locking mechanism. So whenever you put your actual Mobius cradle mount underneath here, you can go right through this hole right here, and it goes from side to side. You can see it there, and that will lock the cradle to the Mobius. It'll lock the Mobius cradle onto this mount here. So that works there, and it's got a click, lock, snap in finish. So it works very well. But anyway, that's what makes it up. And it's very balanced. It's not the smoothest thing in the world, but it's for a quick and dirty little development. It works very well. I'm very happy with it. So now I'll show you how it looks when it's actually on the quadcopter and give you a little bit of footage of that. So this is how the finished product looks. This is looking at the bottom of the X380 with the bottom front. I've got my bracket, hard to show with one hand. I got the bracket that lines up with all the holes, holds the Mobius camera. It does hold it low. This was to be expected, though, because it takes such a great distance for the camera to tilt. So in other words, if you look back under there, like I said, it's very close. That'll work for taking off of level ground, though. That shouldn't be a problem. But that allows it, by hanging that low, it allows it to actually full tilt at 90 degrees. And the real limiting factor is how long that Mobius is on the body of here. So if we look at the side of this, that Mobius has to have room to tilt all the way up there. So that's the Mobius in its cradle that I made. Here's kind of coming around to the view of the back of it. Here we got the back of it. It's got its wires wired in here, the servo and the power. And coming around, you can see when you're facing the front of the quadcopter, we're going to be running the antenna off to the right. In other words, let me get around here on the front and show you what I mean. In other words, here's the front of the quadcopter, and there's a Mobius underneath. And if you look over to the right, you can see that I've swung the antenna in that direction. That helps balance it on that pivot point. And it actually seems pretty secure and pretty balanced. So all in all, I think this is going to be a pretty good setup if you want a 90-degree tilt camera. Now, of course, I'll be doing another version that's just going to allow it to tilt 30, 40 degrees. I haven't come up with the design yet, but bottom line is this should work very good if you want to do the full 90-degree tilt thing. And there it is. And this is just to give you an idea of how the footage looks from the camera as it's tilted. So if I click here, here, each of these is like one knob on the wheel of the X380 controller. Once it gets down to the wall, I'm going to pull down degrees. That's it.